The research vessel Stellar Dawn drifted through space like a metallic whale, its hull gleaming under the distant light of a binary star system. Inside, the corridors buzzed with the quiet efficiency of a crew dedicated to exploration and discovery. But in Conference Room C, Marcus Chong was losing his mind over verb conjugations. No, that's not right either, he muttered, pushing his wire-rimmed glasses up his nose as he stared at the holographic display showing the Viridian grammar structures. The alien text seemed to mock him with its flowing, curved symbols that looked more like art than language. Marcus had always been better with languages than people. Give him a dead tongue or an ancient dialect, and he could decode it in weeks. Give him a living, breathing conversation partner, and he'd somehow find a way to accidentally insult their ancestors or propose marriage. Which was exactly why he was nervous about today's cultural exchange session with Nix. Nix was the Viridian translator assigned to their diplomatic mission, and she was. Well, she was absolutely stunning in a way that made Marcus forget how to form coherent sentences. Her skin had a subtle pearl-like quality that seemed to glow from within, and intricate bioluminescent patterns traced along her temples and down her neck, shifting from soft blue to gentle silver, depending on her mood. Her eyes were large and expressive, a deep violet that seemed to hold depths of wisdom and kindness. But it wasn't just her alien beauty that caught his attention. Nix was brilliant, with a sharp wit and an infectious curiosity about human culture. She had this way of tilting her head when she was thinking, her pointed ears flicking slightly, that Marcus found absolutely adorable. And when she laughed, which wasn't often, but when she did, it was like music. The problem was, Marcus was fairly certain she saw him as nothing more than a bumbling human colleague who occasionally said interesting things about linguistics. "Marcus, you're going to wear a hole in the floor," came a voice from the doorway. He looked up to see Jamie Rodriguez, the ship's chief mechanic, leaning against the frame with grease-stained coveralls and an amused expression. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she had that confident, easy way of moving that Marcus envied. "I'm not pacing," Marcus protested, though he realized he had indeed been walking back and forth in front of the display. "And I suppose you're not nervous about your meeting with the pretty alien translator either." Marcus felt his cheeks burn. "It's a professional cultural exchange session. I'm reviewing Viridian linguistic structures to ensure proper communication protocols are—" "Marcus," Jamie stepped into the room, her expression softening. "You've been preparing for this meeting for 3 days. You know more about Viridian culture than anyone else on this ship, except maybe Nix herself. Just ... Be yourself. Talk to her like a person, not like she's some fragile diplomatic artifact. But what if I say something wrong? What if I accidentally violate some cultural taboo? The Viridians have 17 different levels of formal address, depending on social context and emotional resonance. One wrong word could cause a diplomatic incident." Jamie chuckled. "Or, and hear me out here, you could just be nice to her. Maybe even give her a compliment. I've seen the way she looks at you when she thinks no one's watching." Marcus blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean she likes you, you dense, beautiful man. The bioluminescent patterns on her face get brighter whenever you walk into a room. Even I know that much about Viridian body language." Before Marcus could respond, the door chimed softly. "Come in," he called. His voice, slightly higher than normal. Nix glided into the room with that fluid grace that all Viridians seemed to possess. Today she wore a flowing tunic in deep blue that complemented her natural coloring, and the bioluminescent patterns along her temples were pulsing in a steady, calm rhythm of soft silver light. "Good morning, Marcus," she said, her voice carrying that melodic quality that made even the ship's daily reports sound like poetry. "I hope you are prepared for today's session." "Yes, absolutely," Marcus replied, trying to sound professional and confident. I've been reviewing the cultural protocols for interspecies academic discourse, and I believe we can make significant progress on the translation matrix for emotional terminology. Nyx's head tilted slightly, that adorable thinking gesture, and her patterns shifted to a warmer blue. You have been working very hard on this project. I am grateful for your dedication. They settled into their chairs at the curved conference table, tablets and holographic displays arrayed between them. For the next hour, they worked through complex linguistic concepts, their conversation flowing with an easy rhythm that Marcus had never experienced with another person before. Nyx had this way of building on his ideas that made him feel clever and understood. The concept of longing in Viridian has 3 distinct variations depending on whether the yearning is for something lost, something hoped for, or something present but unattainable, Nyx explained, her fingers dancing over her tablet to show the different symbols. Marcus found himself watching her face as she spoke, the way her patterns brightened when she was excited about a concept, the slight furrow in her brow when she was concentrating. Without thinking, he said, "You look beautiful today, Nyx." The words slipped out so naturally that it took him a moment to realize he'd spoken them aloud. It was just a casual compliment, the kind of thing you might say to a friend or colleague. But the effect on Nyx was immediate and dramatic. Her bioluminescent patterns flared brilliant gold, so bright that Marcus had to squint. Her violet eyes went wide with shock, and she made a small sound that might have been a gasp or a squeak. For a moment, she sat frozen, staring at him with an expression of complete astonishment. "Nyx?" Marcus leaned forward, concerned. "Are you all right? Did I say something wrong?" But she was already rising from her chair, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, so unlike her usual grace. The golden glow of her patterns was pulsing rapidly now, almost frantically. I must ... double quotes, she stammered, her usually perfect English suddenly halting. "Excuse me. I need to consult with ... She turned and practically fled from the room, leaving Marcus staring after her in complete bewilderment. "Nyx, wait," he called, but the door had already whispered shut behind her. Marcus sat alone in the conference room, surrounded by their unfinished work and the lingering scent of ozone that followed Nyx's emotional flare-up. He replayed the moment in his mind, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. 5 minutes later, Captain Torres appeared in the doorway, her expression caught somewhere between amusement and exasperation. The captain was a woman in her 50s, with silver-streaked hair and laugh lines around her eyes, though she wasn't laughing now. "Chun," she said, settling into the chair Nyx had vacated. "What exactly did you say to our Viridian translator?" "Because she just ran past me in the corridor, looking like someone had set her on fire, and her patterns were flashing colors I've never seen before." Marcus pushed his glasses up nervously. I told her she looked beautiful today. It was just a compliment. A friendly professional compliment about her appearance." Captain Torres was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus could see her trying very hard not to smile. "Marcus, you brilliant, oblivious man. Do you have any idea what you just did? Apparently something terrible?" Marcus slumped in his chair. "I knew I shouldn't have deviated from formal protocols. I probably insulted her entire family line, or accidentally challenged her to ritual combat. Or, Marcus." Torres held up a hand to stop his spiraling panic. "You didn't insult her, but you might want to do some research into Viridian courtship customs before you see her again." Marcus felt a cold pit form in his stomach. Courtship customs? Why would I need to research courtship customs? It was just a compliment about her appearance. Captain Torres stood, her lips definitely twitching with suppressed laughter now. "Sometimes, Marcus, a compliment about appearance isn't just a compliment, especially when your universal translator is involved." She left him sitting there, pieces of a horrible puzzle beginning to form in his mind. With trembling fingers, he pulled up the ship's cultural database and began searching for Viridian social customs, specifically anything related to compliments, appearance, and, oh no, courtship rituals. 20 minutes later, Marcus was staring at his screen in horror, finally understanding why Nyx had looked like someone had struck her with lightning. According to the database, telling a Viridian female she was beautiful using the specific phrasing his universal translator had chosen was tantamount to a formal declaration of romantic intent. He had essentially proposed to her. In the corridor outside, Jamie was trying very hard not to laugh as she watched Marcus through the conference room's transparent aluminum walls. The poor guy looked like he'd just discovered he'd accidentally started an interstellar war. Well, she murmured to herself, this is going to be interesting. Nyx's quarters were a study in controlled chaos. Holographic star charts floated above her desk, flickering between various configurations, as she tried to focus on anything other than the memory of Marcus's words. The bioluminescent patterns along her temples pulsed in erratic bursts of gold and silver, betraying the emotional storm she was trying so desperately to contain. She had fled to her room like a frightened child, and the shame of that reaction only made her patterns flare brighter. Viridians prided themselves on composure, on the elegant control of their emotional displays. Yet here she was, cycling through colors like an adolescent experiencing their first crush. The door chimed softly. "Nyx," came Jamie's voice through the comb. "Can I come in? I brought tea. The real stuff, not that synthesized swill from the replicators." Despite her turmoil, Nyx felt a small smile tug at her lips. Jamie had become something of a friend over the past few months, with her easy humor and genuine warmth. "Enter," she called. Jamie stepped inside, carrying 2 steaming mugs and wearing her characteristic grease-stained coveralls. Her dark eyes took in Nyx's agitated patterns with the kind of careful observation that made her such a good engineer. "So," Jamie said, settling into the chair across from Nyx's bed, "want to talk about why you're glowing like a supernova? Or should I pretend I don't notice that you're practically broadcasting your emotions to the entire sector?" Nyx accepted the offered mug, inhaling the rich, earthy scent of genuine earth tea. "I fear I have created a diplomatic incident," she said quietly, "because Marcus told you that you look beautiful?" Jamie's eyebrows rose. "Honey, that's usually considered a good thing in human culture." The golden flare of Nyx's patterns brightened involuntarily. In Viridian culture, such words carry significant weight. When spoken with the formal inflection that his translator used, it constitutes a declaration of bonding intent. Jamie nearly choked on her tea. Bonding intent? Like ... marriage? More binding than your human marriage. Nyx set down her mug with hands that trembled slightly. "Among my people, such declarations create a spiritual resonance between 2 beings. It is not entered into lightly. A formal response requires either acceptance, which creates an unbreakable bond, or rejection, which ... has consequences." What kind of consequences? Nyx's patterns shifted to a troubled deep blue. Shame for both parties. Social isolation. For the one who spoke the words inappropriately, exile is not uncommon. She looked up at Jamie with violet eyes filled with distress. Marcus did not know. He spoke from kindness, not understanding. But ignorance does not negate the binding nature of the words. Jamie set down her mug and leaned forward. "Okay, but here's the thing. Marcus isn't Viridian. Doesn't that change anything?" "I do not know," Nyx admitted. "There has never been such a situation between our species. I must consult with Elder Zeph." 20 minutes later, Nyx knelt in her quarters before a shimmering holographic projection of Elder Zeph, the oldest and wisest of the Viridian cultural advisors. His ancient form was translucent blue, marked with intricate patterns that had long since settled into the deep indigo of one who had lived through centuries of wisdom and sorrow. Child, his voice whispered through the transmission, carrying across light years to reach her. Your patterns tell a story of great confusion. Speak. Nyx recounted the morning's events, her patterns shifting through uncomfortable gold and silver as she described Marcus's words and her shameful flight. Elder Zeph listened without interruption, his own patterns remaining steady and contemplative. When she finished, there was a long silence. Finally, the elder spoke. The humans spoke the ritual of first bonding in the ancient tongue. Your translator rendered his words in the most formal register of our language. But he did not mean, intent matters less than consequence, child. The words have been spoken. Your soul heard them and responded. His ancient eyes studied her fluctuating patterns with keen interest. Your emotional display suggests the resonance was not unwelcome. Nyx's patterns flared brilliant gold before she could control them. Elder, you care for this human, he said gently. There is no shame in this, Nyx, but there is complexity. If you do not respond to his declaration within the cycle of 3 suns, the bond will fade, but not without cost. Both your spirits will bear the mark of incomplete bonding. It is unpleasant. And if I accept, then you will be bound to him as surely as twin stars orbit each other. Your life forces will intertwine. You will share emotions, thoughts, even lifespans to some degree. The elder's patterns deepen thoughtfully. But Nyx, he is not Viridian. We do not know if such a bond can truly form with one of his species. What do you counsel, Elder? Zeph's hologram flickered slightly as the transmission wavered across the vast distance. Follow your heart, child. But first, ensure he understands what his words meant. If he accepts the bond knowingly, then perhaps the stars have guided you to each other. If not, double quotes, the elder's patterns grew sad. Then you must both bear the consequences of words spoken in innocence. Meanwhile, 3 decks up in the ship's anthropology lab, Marcus was getting a very different perspective on his predicament. Oh, you beautiful disaster, Rita Santos laughed, not unkindly, as she pulled up holographic displays of Viridian cultural texts. Rita was the ship's chief anthropologist, a woman in her 40s with prematurely gray hair and the kind of sharp intelligence that could dissect a culture in minutes. It's not funny, Rita, Marcus protested, though he was hunched over in his chair like a man contemplating his own execution. I accidentally proposed to her, in the most formal way possible. According to this database, I might as well have written it in starlight across the nebula. Marcus, honey, calm down. Rita settled beside him, her dark eyes kind but amused. Yes, you stumbled into a significant cultural protocol. But let's examine this rationally. First question, how do you feel about Nyx? Marcus's cheeks reddened. She's amazing. Brilliant, kind, funny when she lets herself be. Beautiful in a way that makes me forget how to breathe sometimes. He looked up at Rita desperately. But that doesn't matter now, does it? I've trapped us both in some alien marriage contract. Not quite. Rita pulled up another display showing the intricate details of Viridian bonding customs. According to this, she has 3 days to respond. If she accepts, you're bound together in ways that would make human marriage look casual. If she rejects you, you both suffer some kind of spiritual backlash, but you're free. Spiritual backlash doesn't sound good. It isn't. Think of it like emotional scarring. You'd both carry the mark of an incomplete bond for the rest of your lives. It affects future relationships, emotional stability, that sort of thing. Rita studied his stricken expression. But Marcus, there's a third option you're not considering. Which is? That maybe, just maybe, she feels the same way about you that you feel about her. Marcus blinked. What do you mean? Rita sighed. Marcus, I've watched you two work together for months. The way she lights up when you walk into a room, literally lights up with those patterns of hers. The way she asks questions about human culture that always somehow circle back to you specifically. The way she lingers after your meetings, like she doesn't want them to end. You think she double quotes. Marcus couldn't finish the sentence. I think she's been falling for you as hard as you've been falling for her. The only difference is, you just accidentally spoke it out loud in a way that makes it legally binding. Before Marcus could respond, his comm unit chimed. Captain Torres' voice filled the lab. Chun, Santos, report to conference room A immediately. We have a situation. Marcus and Rita exchanged glances. What kind of situation? Rita asked. The kind that involves a very agitated Viridian diplomat who just arrived aboard our ship, demanding to speak with our reckless human linguist about violations of sacred bonding protocols. Marcus felt all the blood drain from his face. Oh no. Oh yes, Torres continued, her voice dry. It seems word of your little cultural exchange has reached the Viridian diplomatic corps. They're treating this as a potential incident of cultural contamination. Rita patted Marcus's shoulder sympathetically. Well, on the bright side, at least now everyone knows about it, so there's no point in being embarrassed. Marcus groaned and buried his face in his hands. I'm going to be the first human to accidentally cause an interstellar diplomatic crisis with a compliment. As they made their way to the conference room, Marcus's mind raced through possible explanations, apologies, and desperate bargaining positions. But underneath his panic, a small part of him wondered, where was Nyx in all of this? And more importantly, what was she thinking? In her quarters, Nyx stood before her mirror, watching her own patterns cycle through confusion, fear, hope, and something that looked suspiciously like longing. Elder Zeph's words echoed in her mind. Follow your heart, child. The problem was, she was beginning to realize that her heart had made its choice weeks ago. In the quiet moments when Marcus would explain some fascinating aspect of human language with his eyes lighting up, or when he would make one of his gentle, self-deprecating jokes that made her want to tell him how remarkable he truly was. The question now, whether she had the courage to admit it, especially with Viridian diplomats breathing down their necks, and Marcus probably convinced he'd ruined both their lives. Her door chimed. Nyx? It was Marcus's voice, hesitant and worried. I know you probably don't want to see me right now, but we need to talk. There are diplomats here, and I think we're in trouble. Nyx's patterns flared gold again at the sound of his voice, and she realized with crystal clarity that whatever consequences lay ahead, she would rather face them with Marcus than spend her life wondering what might have been. Enter, she called, her voice steadier than she felt. The door slid open, and Marcus stepped inside, looking haggard and terrified, but determined. When he saw her, his expression softened with relief and something deeper. Nyx, I'm so sorry, he began, but she held up a hand to stop him. Marcus, she said quietly, her patterns shifting to warm silver, we need to discuss what you said to me, and what it means, and what we're going to do about it. He nodded, his brown eyes serious behind his glasses. Whatever it takes to fix this, I'll do it. I never meant to put you in this position. Nyx studied his face, seeing the sincerity there, the willingness to sacrifice his own comfort for hers. It was so very Marcus, so very human, and so very dear to her. What if, she said softly, I do not wish it to be fixed? Marcus stared at Nyx, her words hanging in the air between them like stardust. The soft glow of her bioluminescent patterns had shifted to something he'd never seen before, a warm, pulsing purple that seemed to emanate from deep within her being. What ... What do you mean? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before Nyx could answer, The ship's intercom crackled to life. All senior staff to conference room A immediately. We have Viridian diplomats aboard, and they're not happy. Captain Torres's voice carried an edge of barely controlled frustration. Nix's patterns flickered with anxiety, the purple fading to nervous silver. We must go, she said. But Marcus, after we deal with this situation, we need to finish our conversation. The walk to the conference room felt like a death march. Marcus's mind raced through possible explanations, apologies, and diplomatic solutions, while beside him, Nix moved with that fluid grace that somehow managed to look both elegant and determined. Her patterns had settled into a steady, deep blue. What he was learning meant resolution or decision-making. Conference room A was packed. Captain Torres sat at the head of the table, her expression carefully neutral. Rita Santos had claimed a seat near the back, her anthropologist's eyes already taking notes. Jamie leaned against the wall, her mechanic's coveralls looking distinctly out of place among the diplomatic tension. But it was the three Viridians at the far end of the table that commanded attention. Unlike Nix's subtle, pearl-like coloring, these diplomats were imposing figures. Their bioluminescent patterns were more elaborate, covering their arms and faces in intricate geometric designs that pulsed with authority. The center figure, clearly their leader, had patterns of deep gold and crimson that spoke of high rank and barely contained displeasure. "I am Ambassador Terran," the lead diplomat said, his voice carrying the formal cadence of ancient protocol. "I have come to address the grievous cultural violation that has occurred aboard this vessel." Marcus felt his stomach drop to his boots. "Ambassador, I can explain. You will speak when spoken to." "Human," Theron cut him off, his patterns flaring brighter. "Your reckless actions have created a diplomatic incident that threatens the delicate balance of Viridian-human relations." "Now wait just a minute," Captain Torres interjected, her own voice taking on the steel that had earned her command of an exploration vessel. "Mr. Chun made an innocent mistake." "There's no need for innocent?" Theron's patterns blazed with indignation. "He spoke the ritual of first bonding to one of our finest translators. Such words create spiritual bonds that cannot be undone without consequence. If the human was ignorant of our ways, he should not have been permitted to interact with our people without proper cultural preparation." Marcus watched Nix throughout this exchange, noting how her patterns had gone completely still, not calm, but suppressed, as if she were exerting enormous control over herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was ice-cold and perfectly formal. "Ambassador Theron, with respect, you speak as if I have no agency in this matter." Theron's attention snapped to her. "Translator Nix, you will return to the homeworld immediately for ceremonial cleansing. The contamination of improper bonding words will be dealt with as I see fit." Nix interrupted, her patterns suddenly flaring brilliant gold. Marcus had never seen her challenge authority before, and the sight was both magnificent and terrifying. "I am a grown Viridian, not a child to be shuffled about for political convenience." "You forget yourself," Theron snarled. "The human has compromised your spiritual integrity with his careless words. You cannot be expected to make rational decisions while under such influence. That did it." Marcus shot to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. "Now hold on. I made a mistake, yes, but don't you dare suggest that Nix isn't capable of making her own choices because of it." The room went dead silent. 3 pairs of alien eyes fixed on him with expressions that could have flash-frozen a star. "You dare speak in our presence?" Theron's voice was dangerously quiet. "I dare speak up for someone I care about," Marcus replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "Yes, I made a cultural error. I told a beautiful, brilliant woman that she looked beautiful, not knowing how your translation protocols would interpret it. But that doesn't give you the right to treat her like damaged goods." Nix's patterns flared so bright that everyone in the room had to squint. She rose gracefully to her feet, her violet eyes blazing. Ambassador Theron, I formally request private consultation with the human Marcus Chun to determine our path forward. Absolutely not, Theron snapped. You are too compromised to. I invoke the right of personal sovereignty, Nix said quietly. The effect was immediate. All three diplomats went completely still, their patterns fading to shocked silver. Even Marcus could sense the significance of whatever Nix had just done. Translator, you cannot be serious, the diplomat to Theron's left whispered. I am entirely serious, Nix replied. By our oldest laws, I claim the right to determine my own spiritual path without interference from the diplomatic corps. Terrans. Patterns cycled through several colors Marcus couldn't identify before settling on frustrated amber. Very well, he said through gritted teeth. You have one rotation to make your decision. But know this, if you choose poorly, the consequences will extend beyond yourself. I understand, Nix said calmly. The diplomats filed out, their displeasure evident in every rigid line of their bodies. Captain Torres cleared her throat. Well, that was dramatic. I'll give you two some privacy, but remember, we're all in this together now. Soon, Marcus and Nix were alone in the conference room. The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of impossible choices. Nix, Marcus began, I'm so sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen. She turned to face him fully, her patterns shifting to that warm purple again. Marcus, do you know what you said to me this morning? The exact meaning? Rita explained it to me. I accidentally asked you to bond with me, to marry me, but more than that. I don't fully understand it, but I know it's serious. It is a joining of souls, Nix said softly. In the old ways, when the words are spoken and accepted, two beings become more than the sum of their parts. They share thoughts, emotions, even lifespan to some degree. It is the most intimate connection two Viridians can share. Marcus's heart clenched. And I trapped you in that without meaning to. Marcus. Nix stepped closer, close enough that he could see the intricate patterns of light beneath her skin. What if I told you that I have been hoping for weeks that you would notice me? Not as a colleague or a cultural curiosity, but as someone you could care for? Marcus's breath caught. Nix ... What if I told you that every morning when I prepare for our work sessions, I choose my colors carefully, hoping they might please you? What if I admitted that I had been learning human customs not for diplomacy, but because I wanted to understand what makes you smile? You feel that way about me? Her patterns pulsed brighter as she reached out to touch his hand. Her skin was warm, with a slight tingle like gentle electricity. Marcus, when you told me I was beautiful this morning, my soul responded before my mind could stop it. That is why my patterns flared so bright. It was not shock at your cultural mistake. It was joy that you finally saw me the way. I see you. Marcus stared down at their joined hands, hardly daring to breathe. But the consequences, would you choose them willingly? Nix asked quietly. If you truly understood what bonding meant, if you knew it would tie your life to mine in ways that human marriage never could, would you still want it? Before he could answer, the ship lurched violently, throwing them both against the table. Emergency lighting bathed the room in red as alarms began blaring. All hands to emergency stations? Captain Torres's voice barked over the intercom. We've got a massive ion storm approaching, and our shields are already compromised from that pirate attack yesterday. This is not a drill. Marcus and Nix looked at each other, their moments shattered by crisis. But as they ran toward the bridge, Marcus found his hand instinctively seeking hers, their fingers intertwining as if they belonged that way. The bridge was chaos. Officers shouted readings across the din of alarms, while the main screen showed a wall of crackling energy bearing down on them like an angry god. Report, Marcus called as they arrived. Ion storm, Category 5, Jamie shouted from her engineering station. Our shields are at 60% from yesterday's fight, and this thing is throwing enough energy to fry every system on the ship. Can we outrun it? Torres demanded. Not at our current speed, came the reply from navigation. We'd need to recalibrate the warp field generators, but that requires manual adjustment from the engine room during the storm. That's suicide, Torres said flatly. Not necessarily, Nix spoke up, her voice cutting through the noise. Viridian bioelectrical systems are naturally resistant to ion interference. I could survive in the engine room during a recalibration. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. It's too dangerous. Marcus, I am the only one who could survive it, Nix replied, her patterns shifting to determined gold. But the recalibration process is too complex for one person. I would need assistance from someone who understands human engineering. Their eyes met across the chaos of the bridge, and Marcus saw the truth in her expression. She could do it, but only with help. And there was only one person on the ship who understood both her capabilities and the technical requirements. I'll go with you, he said. Marcus. No, Torres started. Captain, I know the warp field equations better than anyone except Jamie, and she's needed here to monitor the ship's systems. Marcus's voice was steady, resolved. Besides, Nix can protect me from the ion interference if we work together. Nix stepped closer to him. Marcus, if we do this together, if we link our bioelectrical fields to shield you during the process, it would create a temporary bond between us. A precursor to the full ritual. What does that mean? It means we would share thoughts and emotions during the process. You would feel what I feel, know what I know, and I would experience the same of you. There would be no hiding, no pretense. Her violet eyes searched his face. Are you willing to let me see who you truly are? The ship shuddered again, more violently this time. Through the viewports, Marcus could see the edge of the storm beginning to overtake them, crackling with energy that could reduce the stellar dawn to cosmic debris. He looked at Nix, brilliant, beautiful, brave Nix, who had just offered to risk her life to save them all. The woman who had been falling for him while he'd been falling for her, who saw past his awkwardness to something worth caring about. Yes, he said simply. I'm willing. Her patterns blazed with warm gold and purple, more beautiful than any sunset he'd ever seen. Then let us save this ship together. They ran through corridors filled with emergency lighting and the groans of stressed metal. Behind them, Marcus could hear Torres coordinating damage control while the storm began to batter the ship's weakening shields. Engine room was a cathedral of humming machinery and pulsing energy conduits. But as the ion storm began to hit in earnest, everything went wrong at once. Consoles sparked and died, lights flickered, and the air itself seemed to crackle with hostile energy. The main field generator. Marcus shouted over the noise, pointing to a massive piece of equipment that was already showing dangerous fluctuations. I need to recalibrate the harmonic resonance while you stabilize the plasma flow. Nix nodded, then did something Marcus had never seen before. Her bioluminescent patterns began to spread, extending beyond their usual boundaries until her entire body seemed to glow with soft light. She reached for his hands. Link with me, she said. Let me shield you. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into sensation. Marcus could suddenly feel everything Nix felt. Her determination, her fear for his safety, her deep, abiding affection for him. But underneath it all, like a warm current running through her soul, was something that took his breath away. She loved him. Not the careful affection of colleagues or the attraction of physical beauty, but deep, soul-deep love that encompassed everything he was, his awkwardness, his passion for languages, his terrible jokes, his kindness and flowing back through their link. He felt her surprise as she encountered his own emotions, his wonder at her intelligence, his admiration for her grace and strength, his growing certainty that she was the most remarkable being he'd ever met. "You love me," her voice whispered in his mind, wonder and joy coloring the thought. "I love you," he replied without words. "I think I have since the first day we worked together." Around them, the ion storm raged, but within their shared bubble of bioelectrical energy, they worked with perfect synchronization. Marcus's hands flew over the controls, while Nyx channeled her natural resistance to the electromagnetic chaos, their thoughts flowing together until they were no longer two people struggling with separate tasks, but one unified, will focused on survival. The field generator hummed back to life. The plasma flow stabilized. Throughout the ship, systems that had been failing began to respond again. Shields back to full power. Jamie's voice crackled through the comb. "Warp drive is online. Whatever you two did down there, it worked." But Marcus barely heard her. He was staring into Nyx's violet eyes, still linked to her thoughts and emotions, seeing himself reflected there with a clarity that was both terrifying and wonderful. "Marcus," she whispered aloud, her patterns pulsing with warm gold, "when this crisis is over, when the diplomats are dealt with, I want you to ask me again." "Ask you what?" Her smile was radiant, lighting up her entire being. "Ask me if I think you're beautiful too. But this time, mean it the way the translator will render it." Marcus felt his heart stop, then start again, with a rhythm that seemed to match the pulse of her patterns. "And what will you say?" "I will say yes," she replied simply. "I will say yes to everything that means. To bonding with you, to sharing my life with you, to becoming something new together." The ship lurched as they finally outpaced the ion storm, escaping into clear space. Emergency lighting gave way to normal illumination, and the constant alarms finally fell silent. But in the engine room, Marcus and Nyx remained linked, their hands still joined, their hearts finally open to each other. "NYX," Marcus said softly, "will you bond with me? Not because of a translation error or cultural protocol, but because I love you and want to spend my life learning how to make you as happy as you make me." Her patterns blazed brighter than he'd ever seen them, and when she spoke, her voice carried the formal cadence of ancient Viridian ritual. "Marcus Chun of Earth," she said, "I accept your offer of bonding. Let our souls join as our hearts already have." The moment the words left her lips, something shifted in the space between them. The temporary link created by their crisis collaboration deepened, becoming something permanent and profound. Marcus could feel Nyx's joy flowing through him like warm light, while his own happiness seemed to make her patterns dance with new colors he'd never seen before. They were bonded now, truly and completely, their lives intertwined in ways that went beyond anything either species had experienced before. And in that moment, as they stood surrounded by the hum of recovered machinery and the soft glow of their joined souls, Marcus realized that his accidental compliment had been the best mistake he'd ever made.